Hello, everyone, and welcome to Walking Through the Bible. Throughout the book of Job, Job has been walking a very fine line. He doesn't curse God, and he doesn't lose faith in God, recognizing that God is supreme and can do whatever he wishes, whenever he wishes. However, Job does from time to time view God as being unfair towards him. After all, what has Job done to deserve being treated like this? In Job's mind, nothing, for he was righteous, a fact that God clearly agreed with. However, Job's flawed theology is that because God can act, that everything that happens because God directly caused it to happen, leaving no room for his suffering to be as a result of time and circumstance, or even Satan. We're going to see this flawed theology rear its ugly head yet again here at the end of Job 30, so let's read about it now. If you have a Bible then, you can turn to the book of Job, to chapter 30. We're going to be reading from verses 16 to 31. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Job chapter 30, beginning at verse 16. And now my soul is poured out because of my plight. The days of affliction take hold of me. My bones are pierced in me at night, and my gnawing pains take no rest. By great force my garment is disfigured. It binds me about as the collar of my coat. He cast me into the mire, and I have become like dust and ashes. I cry out to you, but you do not answer me. I stand up, and you regard me. But you have become cruel to me. With the strength of your hand you oppose me. You lift me up to the wind and cause me to ride on it. You spoil my success. For I know that you will bring me to death, and to the house appointed for all living. Surely he would not stretch out his hand against a heap of ruins, if they cry out when he destroys it. Have I not wept for him who was in trouble? Has not my soul grieved for the poor? But when I looked for good, evil came to me, and when I waited for light, then came darkness. My heart is in turmoil and cannot rest. Days of affliction confront me. I go about mourning, but not in the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry out for help. I am a brother of jackals and a companion of ostriches. My skin grows black and falls from me. My bones burn with fever. My harp is turned to mourning, and my flute to the voice of those who weep. In chapter 29, Job described his former life as one of wealth, respect, and righteousness. Even though his righteousness did not change, in chapter 30, Job told us his suffering has caused him to become a man that was derided by others because of his perceived sin. At the end of chapter 30, Job even extends this to God, though he doesn't view God as deriding him. Rather, he views him as not counting his righteousness for anything, not hearing his pleas, and not allowing him to die quick enough. Job begins this section by saying that his plight has caused him to pour out his soul. Have you ever heard of venting? Venting is a time when we simply let out complaints into the open instead of keeping them bottled up inside. Venting sessions usually take place between at least two people, when one person speaks and the other one typically listens and tries to support the one venting. Now, even though not all venting is wrong, we need to be careful when we do so, for they could easily turn into sessions of rage, of slander, of gossip, and backbiting, instead of seeking advice in how to deal with a bad situation. What Job said about God here is simply not true, even though Job feels that it is. Job says that he cried out to God and God didn't listen, instead choosing to simply look at him, seemingly to take glee in the sad state that Job had become. He accuses God of being cruel to him, using his mighty hand to afflict him. It's as if God picked up the unruly wind and forced Job to ride on it, much like bull riders do at stampedes. Job understands that he will eventually die, as that is the way of man. But since that is the way of man, why is God delaying it, allowing him to suffer more? God has not caused these things, nor has God been deaf to Job's cries, as we will see later on in the book. But Job doesn't know what the will of the Lord is, nor what is going on behind the scenes, so speaking in such a way is foolish and dangerous in charging the Lord with wrong. Why this seems so unfair to Job isn't because he doesn't understand what he did to deserve this treatment. Job wept for him who was in trouble and grieved and helped the poor. Job worshipped God constantly and sacrificed to him not only for himself but for others too. He would have been a model to others for what it meant to be righteous. Why then had God treated him this way? And yes, we know God didn't treat him this way, but God allowed it to happen. Why did God do that? Well, it was to prove a point to Satan back in Job 1 and 2 and to teach his angels about who really is all-powerful and all-knowing. And it was to prove a point to Job that he could remain righteous in spite of suffering. You see, it's easy to say someone is righteous when things are going well. God knew Job, though, that Job would be righteous even through suffering. But Satan didn't know that, and Job didn't know that. God always requires us to prove our faithfulness or lack of faithfulness, and so allows us to suffer. He provides us comfort along the way. He may even alleviate the suffering down the line. But faith always demands action, in good times and in bad. When God told Abraham, "Now I know that you would obey me," even if that meant sacrificing Isaac, his only son, back in Genesis 22, God wasn't surprised with Abraham's faith. But Abraham's faithfulness had now been proven, showing God's knowledge to be complete. God could now be justified in the pronouncements that he made about Abraham to anyone who challenged him, and Satan challenges God all the time, as we see here in Job. The same could be said of Job. Was Job in pain? Yes, and it was immense. Did Job deserve to suffer? No, but we live in a world of pain and suffering, and so even the righteous are not exempt. But the righteous have something the wicked don't have, a hope of eternal salvation, which will be apart from suffering. That hope comes from having living faith in God that will obey all that he says in the revealed scriptures. Let's never lose sight of that hope, for if we do, the suffering we face on this earth will pale in comparison to what lies ahead in hell. Let's be like Job, who didn't lose his faith in God, would repent later in the book, and let's continue on the path to heaven. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Job chapter 31, verses 1 to 12, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. We thank you for watching Walking Through the Bible today. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. But if you like this video, we ask that you consider subscribing to our channel so you won't miss out on other videos in our series, as well as share this video among your friends so that the saving message of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.